back in the 19th century, it kind of paved the way for a lot of stereotypes that you hear today, and a lot of criticism that minorities have received. And the media is not all polished and squeaky clean as some of you may have knew from your experiences. So I want to start with a minstrel show called Blackface. This started back in the 19th century, like in 1830. And blackface is a form of theatrical makeup used by performers to represent a black person. They kind of wanted to start the happy-go-lucky darky on the plantation, where the term coon came from. This blackface show kind of, well, basically, this is where all the stereotypes and name-calling of black people have started. White performers also use blackface. They would paint themselves black however they could. Like I said right here, with burnt cork and grease paint or shoe polish. However they can blacken their skin is what the white performers did back during this time. And they exaggerated their lips to try and make themselves appear more than just the skin color, but try to make themselves look as black as possible. And they tried to over-exaggerate our features. They wore the woolly wigs, they wore gloves to cover up all their white skin, tailcoats, ragged clothes, to complete the full transformation to be a black person. And what a minstrel show is basically a way to dumb down a more exotic form of art. So they would mimic like opera shows, and they would put on the opera show, but in a way where the common public would be able to understand, opera show. So the next slide is going to be some pictures. I don't know how you guys feel about the pictures, but if you have any comments or concerns about them, feel free to interject whenever you feel moved. So these are kind of what media used as advertisement for different kind of foods and products. As you can see right there, the freeze of the 5 cents, that's from France. And stuff like this is still used today, not as much, but in different countries there are still other incidents that hint at blackface. In 2011, there were a group of kids in Canada who dressed up like this picture right here, and they tried to say it was to uplift Usain Bolt for the Olympics, and they dressed in all black and chain and smoke weed over and over again, and they were trying to say it was to uplift him as an athlete. It was a school in Montreal. They were they had consequences for it, but still. And then in countries like France and Mexico, they still sell their propaganda and things with these pictures on it to try and sell their product. Alright, so now I'm going to go into how cartoons like Warner Brothers and Looney Tunes played a significant role in how racism was looked at back in the 19th century. So again, these cartoons may be graphic, so feel free to have any comments. So as you guys can see, a lot of the stereotypes that went on, or that were displayed on these cartoons, is how a lot of the stereotypes are formed today about minorities and African Americans. I don't know if you guys noticed, the town in the last video was called Lazy Town, and it was a predominantly black. It was supposed to be a black kind of scene. And what I want to end with is another aspect of racism is called color blindness. And a lot of you may have grown up and heard people say, well, I don't see race, or I'm not racist because I don't see color, or anything like that. And that can also be a hindrance towards our progression to become more of an equal country, to end racism. And I feel as though that's a big part on why it's still prevalent today. And a quick question for you guys is, how often do you think you guys talk about race, amongst yourselves or amongst your peers or family? How often do you guys think you talk about race within these questions?
Yeah, I don't have to think. I know at least once a month I work for a Korean company.
Okay.
So there's always talk about the differences and how things are done, and how things are expected, and trying not to, what we consider normal, they may consider an insult. So yeah, it's something that we have to deal with a lot.
So how do those conversations go? Do they get heated, or are they really cool for the most part?
No, and honestly, the reason it doesn't heat it, they own the company. So you're trying to please them because they're your employer. So we're trying to make sure we serve the market here in North America, but also we respect the values of them.
Makes sense. Does anybody else add on to that? All right. So, not talking about race back then was what Logan hinted at was like a white privilege, and then he went on about white privilege and things that the majority would sometimes take for granted, and kind of an exercise that you guys can do on your own. I'm not going to do it right now because we're out of time. Or I'm out of time. But just imagine if one of your parents were of another race, and think about your life as it is now. If, say, your father was of a minority race, but he had the same education, same background, same everything as your father today is, and just think if your life would be any different from the time you grew up if you had a minority father, but the same education as your normal father. And then kind of a quote I want to leave you with is, colorblindness actually maintains the very cycle of silence, ignorance, and denial that needs to be broken for racism to be dismantled. And then, so thank you. Next up, we're going to have Kareem Young. We're going to talk about what he learned in this class.
Hi, as London said, my name is Kareem Young. Good afternoon. First, I want to start off with a quick question from a male's perspective and a female's perspective. We'll do both sides of the room. Sir, if you just answer the question for me, what do you think, or how should I say, in your own words, can you define what a melting pot is?
In terms of society, you mean?
Yes.
It's, well, from my understanding, melting pots usually various ethnicities that are living in the same area and may not necessarily be getting along, but they're at least in that same area together.
Okay. If you don't mind.
Yeah, that's my understanding of it. Though I generally have heard it, at least in elementary school, it's as a positive thing.
Mm-hmm.
It's a country thing too. We hear that more of a country instead of a local.
Well, I'm happy you both gave me your inputs and hinted on that. Well, you said it's positive, melting pot coming together, obviously, different races coming together, mixing. The funny thing is, I'm actually the son of immigrant parents, and when they came to America, they thought they were going to have a better opportunity to strive and earn more income and just have it provide for me. But when they came here, they said, I've asked them before this presentation how they viewed America, and they openly said it's not as kind as they thought it would have been. It actually faced more racism and prejudice in the United States than they did when they were back home. So I just want to give you guys a little bit of food for thought for that. As I said, most neighborhoods nowadays that are like rich and affluent are predominantly white. Immigrants are facing more harassment and hostility nowadays. And also communities that are like underdeveloped, as we all know, are mainly like occupied by minorities. Sorry about that. I want to give you a little, some of you already know this obviously, a little historical time background. Native Americans, obviously, when the Europeans first came here, they viewed Native Americans as savages. They wanted to Christianize them and basically civilize them. This led to obviously mass genocide and a lot of, almost an extension of an entire population of a group of people. Media portrayal today still kind of has them portrayed negatively with like, for example, the Washington Redskins logo, where they, we all know Redskin is obviously a derogatory term for Native American for when they were killed back in the early colonial times. African Americans, as we all know, coming to early America, they were stripped of their names and basically their humanity. Throughout time, they were beaten, tortured, and then sometimes lynched for some committed crimes that they may or may have not done. And to this day, African Americans, they still face, and we as African Americans still face some type of discrimination in all facets, whether it's in the work field or in the judiciary system. Japanese Americans, I don't think this group is, or any type of Asian American is really talked about or highlighted when dealing with race. During the 1942 Pearl Harbor bombing, obviously we can all imagine they faced a lot of attention, kind of like what happened with 9/11. After that incident, a lot of Muslims and people from Islam, they faced a lot of discrimination. But after that, in 1942, President Roosevelt, as we all know, one of America's greatest presidents, gave an executive order basically like put Japanese Americans that were living in the United States that had nothing at all to do with the war, and they were naturalized United States citizens, were basically put in camps and in prison. Like I said, the order basically entrapped them. They weren't allowed to do anything. They were basically like told what to do, when and where they could and could not go. I also want to show you a video, basically telling the story of what happened.
Evacuate Japanese American farmers from their property, telling them that at a certain date they'll have to leave the farm, take one pack or luggage with them, and report to the railroad station and put them to trains to be evacuated to an unknown place, to the detention camps in the West. It was a horrible thing.
It was kind of strange feeling that here I was fighting for our country, and my parents and mother and sister were in a friendly country.
Alright, I'm going to basically stop it right there because of the time reasons. As I just showed in the video, you basically saw like a little small picture of what happened to them and the life that they faced. A little, like I said, you didn't get the full effect. But my thing that I took from that whole video was like the hardest part was being a Japanese American citizen. If I was a Japanese American citizen and fighting the war for my country, and at the same time my family was basically imprisoned for basically their nationality and ethnicity while I'm fighting for the country and them as a whole. That kind of was like straining me a little bit. That's the biggest thing I took away from that video. Jewish Americans, as we all know throughout history, I mean, they face a lot of persecution and a lot of prejudice from different races. In colleges, in earlier American times, they were discriminated and weren't allowed to go to certain colleges. Oftentimes, they weren't allowed to buy certain properties depending on what communities they were living in. And to this day, they still face a lot of prejudice based on the way that they look and like the history basically saying everybody says Jewish Americans are money grabbers and they just like steal money all the time, which is completely not true. And I wish everyone, would be more sensitive to that fact. Islamophobia, which is the most current racism that's going on in the United States and actually all across the entire world globally. I want to thank Doc for basically opening my eyes to that by forcing us to look more at the broader aspect of what's going on in the world by having us do journals and basically reading and researching more. But to this day, they're facing wiretapping. They can't even go on an airplane without being looked at or viewed as terrorists or threats to what's going on to Americans or anyone else in the world. I mean, they can't even speak their own native tongue in the airport without being sent off to jail or the FBI coming to arrest them. And as I said, this is the most common and the most accepted form of racism that's going on in the United States currently. Now my classmates are going to talk about that.
All right, so we're just finishing up, and we want to say again, thanks for coming. And not everything is bad. We've made a lot of strides in the United States. We just want to give you a little history on things, educate you on some of the things that are still going on today that opened our eyes to certain things. And now we're going to end with, why we think this class is good for our majors and how it's going to affect our majors. And me being in accounting in the business world, I think learning how different groups of people do things differently and how business is so so demanding and hot and competitive. Like you said, you're trying to have to deal with, you have to talk to people from different countries, from different ages, from different genders. So I think being more open to different views and things like that is what I'm going to take out of this class. And I think this class really helped me open my eyes to these issues.
Like she said in the beginning, I'm a sports business. So I mean, we kind of all are in the business realm. But to me personally, in the sports world, it's very competitive, and it's pretty hard to set yourself apart in the sport world because there are a lot of trends, a lot of common trends with different like gyms and agencies and things like that. But taking this class and knowing about diversity, learning about different cultures, being able to relate to different cultures and not sheltering yourself or putting people in a bubble will help you get a competitive advantage in the sports world because starting to grow globally, internationally. I'm a football player, so the NFL is starting to go to Europe. It's starting to go to London, and they're having games in Mexico now. And I just feel as though being able to be flexible and branch out to different cultures and being able to relate to them and not judge them will help me get a competitive advantage in my major.
I mean, a lot of it's going to be repetitive, but the biggest thing I took away from this is the whole thing with my major is from this class is if we all, as collectively as a human population, don't know our history, we're not going to advance as a civilization, and we're going to repeat it. So for me, the biggest thing I took away from this, I need to know the history of like each individual ethnic background in America. So like, if I see a person that I'm working with, and so I don't say certain things that might offend them, that's important. You got to know that. Where do you go? Do you stay in America, or where do you go to a foreign country where you get to meet other people in the world? So I mean, like I said, basically like you just got to know and be educated on what's going on in the world. That's how this classes are going to affect my major.
Thank you, guys. Is there any questions? That concludes our.
One real quick question. It's easy. Is there like a national group that deals with diversity? Like, is there like a group of people like working on it, whether it be a government agency or just a private agency? Like, is there someone? Is there a group? I'm not sure.
To answer that question, it's interesting you said that because we had to I just do a little one-page paper on this. I know for people that are Muslim or Islamic ethnic background, they actually do have a group. So I think I can't remember what it's called, to be honest with you, but they have like a group that like like routinely goes and speaks out and like goes to rallies about like persecution, basically like the racism that Islam and Muslim Americans are facing currently in the United States and all around the world.
So they kind of go around and educate people.
Yeah, they speak out all the time. What's going on? I mean, they want the same rights that we all have. I mean, it would be kind of like, how would you feel if someone, you can't even walk to a store or, like I said, to the airplane without being looked at funny or discriminated against?
What would you say, I'm asking you to speak for the rest of your class too, but what would you say in general was the most eye-opening concept or fact that you as a class learned?
Well, the most interesting thing I learned was like the institutionalized racism, because everyone can see the outward racism, individual, when you're picking on someone, when you're talking to all this. I think it was just eye-opening seeing the statistics and just the examples of the institutionalized racism, because like I said, most people don't even know what's going on, and the people doing it don't even know that they're doing it. But it's happening, and I wouldn't have known most of this unless I was educated on it. And you know, we watched a few videos on it, people that really look into that and the statistics, and I think that's what I took away from it the most, is that the silent racism is the most dangerous kind, and that's what we got to try to overcome right now.
I think personally, what the most eye-opening thing I took away from this class was the media. What I presented on, we watched a video about a guy who spoke. We gave a speech about diversity and how, in his speech, he talked about how the media portrays minority a certain way, and that paints a picture for the whole society to just pigeonhole every minority in that category that the media wants us to believe that they are. And that was real eye-opening to me, because I didn't really look at it that way until I saw the video, and I was like, you know what, that's kind of true a little bit, how the media only plays certain clips of an interview that an African American does. They only play him being confrontational, him or her being confrontational, or saying, you know, things that a normal person in that setting wouldn't say. But they don't play the whole interview or the whole clip of the interview where they talk about, you know, the good things of it, and they only show, you know, like rappers, or they only show Mexican gangs, or they only show gangbangers, things like that. They only show that on TV, and then you wonder why we have all this police crime, and you wonder why we have all these racial things that are going on today. And I thought I put myself in a category of thinking there was racism too, but then as I watched this video into this class, I started to think more. I came to the realization that it may not necessarily be racism from, I'm going to use the cop brutality as an example, because that's probably the biggest thing that's been going on recently. And I don't necessarily think the cops are racist to that extent. I more so think that they're acting out of fear, and I think that they're scared from the images that the media has portrayed about minorities, African Americans, and they're just acting off of their fear because they don't want the African Americans, or they think that every African American is like that, and they're going to retaliate and kill them or hurt them first, so they react quicker, and obviously it's not always right. And another part of what I saw was that how we watched a clip where Chris Rock, the comedian, said that he lives in this really rich neighborhoods with like Serena Williams and other athletes who make all these kind of millions of dollars. You know, they work hard to do all this stuff, and then he said, you know, it's a gated community far away. And then, you know, he said that his next door neighbor was a white dentist, and that kind of made me laugh a little bit inside and think, like, you have all these African Americans who are athletes, singers, who work hard to get millions of dollars, but right next door to him is a dentist, you know, who's not making millions of dollars. And that kind of sat with me a little bit, made me think about that kind of thing. So that's what I took away from it.
Alright, the most eye-opening thing is that I learned from this class is basically from a book that I alluded to again with my professor. Basically, I won't say forced us to read, but encouraged us to read for class. The title of the book was called White Privilege, and my section dealt with like the historical background, kind of like my presentation handled with racism in America. But like it was just like, I wouldn't say I'm not like at all with it, but like the tactical, like the thought behind racism in America. Like in earlier colonial times, basically like when they brought over African slaves to the United States, what it did was it basically separated Native Americans and Africans, so like they wouldn't come together as a whole and like form as a one unit against the white colonial Americans. Because obviously, the greater you are in numbers, the more you can overpower somebody and basically become the dominant race, or the dominant figure. That's the biggest thing I took away from it was like, and also what Logan alluded to in this PowerPoint was like redlining and stuff like that, how they segregated certain population and ethnic groups in the United States. It's just like the whole militaristic thing behind racism that's going on, that went and kind of still going on in the United States. That's the most eye-opening thing that I took away from this whole class and this project.
Any other questions?